Well, so it's been a while. Yeah, I meant to have these videos up a while back, but kind of got busy with the other channel, so better late than never. And of course, a while back I did my top favorite Kanto and Johto Pokemon. It's time to continue the trend with Hoenn and Sinnoh. So, let's get into the video. Of course, my number 10 pick is, of course, Florine. Florine is a Pokemon that you get pretty late into these games, but it's not a disappointment. It's an ice water type and learns some pretty interesting moves, but I can kind of see why it is one of the more forgettable Hoenn Pokemon, considering this region does have like a lot of water types. Of course, moving on to number 9, we of course have Gardevoir. Gardevoir is an interesting Pokemon, and its addition, its new typing with the fairy type in the Gen 6 games and so on, made Gardevoir more interesting, as it could learn quite a few new moves, which made it more usable in battle, and very interesting Pokemon. And then, in fact, it has a Mega Evolution is also pretty cool. Unfortunately, the internet has kind of ruined Gardevoir, especially Vaporeon. Of course, next up, I'll be turning to Shoal Cave for my number 8 pick, Glalie. Glalie was the original evolution of Snorunt. Of course, Snorunt would later get a new evolution with Frostless in the Gen 4 games. Glalie was a fun Pokemon and still remains a very interesting Pokemon to use, despite the branched evolution giving you another option. Sure, Glalie is a pure ice type, and so might not be as interesting compared to the ice ghost type with Frostless, but Glalie has always been one of my favorite Pokemon. It's a giant floating ice face that just looks angry all the time, and also learns some pretty cool ice type moves, and just looks cool. Moving on. Of course, next up is Camerupt. Yeah, Camerupt might not be like the most interesting Pokemon to use. Again, the Hoenn region does have other fire types, but Camerupt, well, it's a fun Pokemon. I also like camels. One of my very first stuffed animals growing up was a camel, and so Camerupt kind of Camerupt had caught my eye, and its fire ground typing, despite making it 4 times weak to water, makes it pretty interesting, as it learns some really great moves, and, well, looks adorable. Of course, they continued the ground type trend with Flygon. Flygon is an awesome Pokemon. Being a ground dragon type, it learns, well, again, quite some interesting moves, and apparently gets mistaken as a pseudo-legendary, even though it isn't one. But despite the misconception, Flygon is a fun Pokemon, and is a Pokemon that I always enjoy using in whichever region it appears in. And after that, I of course have Manectric. Manectric is a fun Pokemon. It's a pure electric type, and again, learns some really awesome moves, and it was one of the first Pokemon that I Mega Evolved. I had it on my team in Alpha Sapphire, and had another one in Sapphire, and I think even Ruby. It's one of my favorite Pokemon, even though it doesn't seem to get much attention, and doesn't have the best like Mega Evolution, but it kind of, I don't know, looks like, I don't know. Of course, moving on. And, of course, my number 4 pick is, of course, Mawile. Mawile had an interesting change along with Gardevoir. In the earlier generations, Mawile was a pure Steel type. With the introduction of the Fairy type, Mawile gained a new type and got even better. Its new typing allowed it to learn some pretty cool moves and be super effective against Dragon Duck and fighting, eliminating one of its weaknesses and just making it even cooler. And of course, Mawile's Mega Evolution is one of the coolest ones out there, and became my favorite Pokemon, one of my favorites, way before I even had it. Number 3, I of course have Aggron. Aggron is a cool Pokemon. It's a rock steel type, and again, learns some pretty fun moves. In my opinion, it should have been I feel like it probably should have been a steel ground type, but that's just my opinion. But Aggron looks cool, and is, well, just extremely cool. It's a very intimidating Pokemon, and has always been fun to use, even though its evolution kind of makes it look like a Transformer that broke halfway through, and its 4 times weakness to fighting and ground, and the fact that it loses its rock type when it Mega Evolves. Of course, at number 2, we have Metagross. Metagross is a big metallic looking spider, and I love it. It's a steel psychic type, and it learns moves that allows it to hit pretty hard. And just, it looks cool. Its shiny is even better. And its Mega Evolution is just intimidating, and I love it. Of course, a couple honorable mentions before I get to my number 1 pick. I, of course, have Cacturne and Medicham. I want to add them to the list, but I'm trying to keep it as either top 5 or top 10, but these 2 Pokemon are pretty fun ones to use. An honorable mention also goes to Altaria, as, again, it's a pretty fun Pokemon, and its Mega Evolution kicked a lot of butt. Of course, my number 1 pick is, of course, Beautifly. Yeah, probably surprising considering bug types are often disregarded for being too weak, but Beautifly is probably my favorite Hoenn Pokemon. It was my first level 100 in Alpha Sapphire, and it had some pretty fun moves. Named mine Tiffany when I had one in Alpha Sapphire, and it wound up being one of my favorite Pokemon that I ever used in any of my playthroughs. Despite it being weak and kind of a knockoff Butterfree, it's still a Pokemon that I enjoy using, and I would definitely recommend others use it, as, well, it can be full of surprises. Of course, these were my top 10 Hoenn Pokemon. I, of course, am planning on knocking out the other regions, although I don't know when the Gen 6 or Gen 8 videos would come out, as don't really have enough to really fill a top 10 or like a top 5. But of course, until next time, and goodbye.